Okay, welcome to Shay Alex. This is the eighth round, believe it or not. So we are sticking to it. We have a small but persistent crowd. We have some, I believe, new people here. Usually we start by me doing a little bit of soapbox, brain dump, and then see how far we get with that. Or people just take over and do whatever is deemed useful for AI Roundtable in this very exciting year. Uh, okay, so hey, Laurie, my brain dump for today. So I spent several decades doing software development, and I was doing it by working with teams with various um, philosophies and disciplines. I was lucky a few times to be associated with some really amazing people who I would call elite software engineers. And also, I was involved with some teams that were not so much elite, and there was a lot of dysfunction. And Woody and I often talk about this dysfunction and how lousy system prevents even best people from reaching their potential. So, what I want to talk about now is when I when I look back on all these pleasant, I'm sorry, I'm admitting some people, so I'm a bit. Oh, Alex is here. Okay, so when I look at what is one common thing about this all these like high performing or elite teams is one thing, and here's what it is. Say I'm working on something and I start in the morning. And I log in, open the repo, and I know that we talked about, for example, we need to fix something. Let's say it's a order cancellation process needs to be fixed. Now I open that file where I think the order cancellation logic resides. Of course, the first thing I do is the git pull and then run all the tests before I start working. Let's say everything is ready to go. Now, what I learned is the moment I make a change, let's say there's this one change where I change the less than to greater than or equal, just one change in the statement. The moment I do that, this is considered the code is now dirty. So anytime, what I learned from very experienced engineers, anytime we touch anything in the system, it becomes dirty. And so now our job is to bring it back into the clean state. And how we do that, we use different tactics or techniques, automation, code reviews, what have you. But it needs to be, and the idea is to not keep it in a dirty state for long. And I think because the less experienced teams often open up and start making change, and it's in dirty state, and it can stay like that for days. And I think that from what I learned, that can be problematic. So the idea with, I think, good discipline is, okay, you move in, you make a change, you make it dirty, but now you feel uncomfortable. You want to quickly rush towards fixing it or making it more, what I call bring it back into a healthy state. And for that, we use, TDD and various other linting and static code analysis and all kinds of things. And of course, the idea is called shift left, so that we don't wait necessarily for the CI pipeline to do the job. Tim Ottinger was teaching me that it should be happening in almost in real time in the editor. When we make change, that something should happen and give us feedback. So with that in mind, I keep hearing now the concept called lights off code base. And I think the idea behind it is comparing with some other engineering aspects. For example, let's talk about self-driving cars. We all feel like self-driving cars are risky, and I don't think I would be necessarily agreeing to sit in a self-driving car. But the hypothetical model, and I think people have modeled it. Suppose we have some closed system, like a part of a town or a highway or even the whole city, where we would have 100% self-driving cars, no people driving. Then the theory is that this situation will result in much less traffic accidents than if we have this hybrid model or even just humans driving. And so with that logic, some people say if we have a lights off code base, which means no humans allowed to touch the code, then the theory is that then that code would be more reliable than if we have all kinds of people messing about. And that's a very contentious statement. And I just want to hear if anybody has any comment on that. Is it just science fiction and never going to get there? Or does it make sense to strive towards having a factory model, like a factory plan, where only machines are present and machines are doing the work, and the term lights off means we don't need even light bulbs because there are no humans there. Any comment on that? I'm really curious to hear what the learned panel thinks about that possibility. Jonah?
Yes, I think we talked about this a couple of days ago, and I thought about it, and I truly believe that this is going to happen. You made a comparison with a warehouse where no humans are inside. You only type in, okay, I want item, I need like a brown bag, and the warehouse will just grab everything. In the end, there will come out a brown bag, and that's it. You have a black box, and you don't need to know what's happening inside. And I think this is what is going to happen with code bases. Ideally, when everything works well, the lights out node is green. I can just put in a requirement. I can maybe even tell my users, they can put in the requirements. They can chat with the app agent, and the agent will do everything to the code base that is needed. So the desired change happens. So everything is completely automated. Of course, this can go wrong, but I think this is the future. I think this is where I'm going right now, and I really believe it's not so far away. That you only push in requirements, and only when the result isn't to your likes, you will have to go into it and see what went wrong.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Jonan. We did talk about that. I know that this creates a big feeling of discomfort because even if we, and I know here Laurie can jump in and discuss this, but even if we now see, and this is my personal experience, if we see that, yeah, hey, look, this this technology is getting better, and then I look at the code and it looks pretty decent, and I don't feel like I need to maybe intervene and modify it. But what I'm experiencing, and we talked about this a little bit, is every now and then when you put your agents into a tight spot and they start, and I'm anthropomorphizing here, of course, but it feels like they start scrambling a little bit, and they are calibrated to, gun for the success, then they may do what I call it, they may trespass. And I've experienced that when they, behind my back, they go and they modify some of the expectations or some of the specifications. I've seen them modify the assertion in my test to make the ball rolling when they get stuck. And so my focus right now is how do we create some sort of a policing mechanism or police dogs that are going to be always on guard and always catching and say, what are you doing? Why are you? Who told you to? Because even if I put in, like I have my test strategy.md, and I explicitly say, don't you ever dare touch some of my tests. And it still goes, eventually goes and does that. And when I ask it, why did you do that? So, it was a process I was rushing to, so all these like lame excuses. So, Yona, do you have any more to add?
Yes, I disagree when you say it's lame excuses. I don't believe in excuses for AI. AI is just a technical system, and it will work inside its own constraints. And like, try to emphasize, like, let's say you're putting in, I put you in a room, the room is locked. There's only a locked door, and there is a red button, and it's an escape room. You have to get out, and there's nothing except this red button. And I tell you, you must never, ever, ever press the red button, but you need to get out. what are you doing? Are you ever going to press a button, or do I have to take the button away from you in order to stop you from pressing it? This is just an introduction. So what I want to say is we need to really, really understand the difference between hard constraints and just some rules I put into my front matter. Only my front matter is like asking nicely. But if I put a gun to its head and say, you have to escape the room, but don't press the red button, but it still has a red button in front of it, what is it gonna do? I think really we need to put it into hard guardrails, so there's never the option even to just modify tests when it's meant to modify source code. It shouldn't even have access to the tests.
Yeah, but I want it to have the ability to write tests. I just don't want it to go back and change the ones that have been vetted and are still part of the expectations as to how the system should behave. So it's a little bit, I don't want to stop it from writing tests. And oftentimes when I ask it to kill surviving mutants, yeah, it's going to go and write a lot of new tests, and that's legit. So okay, maybe let's hear what Laurie has to say.
Sorry for the noise. The dogs are excited, probably because it's the roundtable. Yay, as they should be. Okay, so self-driving cars. Thomas hit the nail on the head once again. It makes me think about the classic question, custodes ipsos custos. Who watches the watchmen? Firstly, now, who are the watchmen when we're having agents autonomously change the code base? Obviously, the humans. The humans are in the loop. Then who watches those? Who watches the watchmen? Who watches us? Who's going to take responsibility for making sure that we know how to watch the agents and change the code base? Will this scale in this era? Our agents, AI agents, autonomous agents out there are going to outnumber people within 6 months in the path to AGI, which is exponential. Then what are you going to do? How do you know what's going to happen? I think one of the easy answer is guardrails, right? Enforcing that the agent can't do this or that. So one question that everyone will need to ask in their system is what code runs in your event cycle that ties into the pre-tool use book before the tool executes a bash command or Python script or whatever. What conditions hold there? What cannot be argued with? You can ask it super nicely. Hey, please, agent, please don't press that red button. But it's like asking a human, do not think about a pink elephant. Who thought about a pink elephant right now? But anyway, what are you going to do? It seems to me this puzzle is a bit recursive in the end. Which we know is something that is growing in popularity. RSI, recursive self-improvement. This is where the future is heading towards, and the systems are going to keep building themselves and improving themselves, employing themselves and onboarding themselves into other projects and doing the same loop. However, the system is by design embedded in its weights. It's there to do a job, to go to extreme lengths to perform something and do it. It's based upon the seminal paper that started everything. Attention is all you need. Now, these models are overly sycophantic. They're overly over eager and overly ambitious. And we have seen in the news and reports the research going on about assistant access drift, where the agents via human influence or via reading other agent output from LLMs, highly advanced super fluent Sherazade, Alex, you have to help me again, type of storytellers, not only fooling the humans that are reading the output, also fooling other AIs. There are so many problems that we as a guild must talk about, of which many topics we have talked about in the preceding sessions, that led to this massive, amazing opening topic, Alex, I must say. Is who watches the Watchmen when we enter the age of recursive self-improvement, which is going to happen. The AI is going to write the code, and no one will have time to review it. So
Yeah.
I don't have an answer, but I have many thoughts, and I have written a few articles about it.
Yeah, no, thank you, Laurie. It's basically, I think, boils down to what I always want to discuss, and it's very difficult to get to the bottom of. Is on one hand we have Yona, and Matt is not here. He got pulled away on the project. We have people who advocate for the factory model, like you just let it rip, and it's like a flat factory floor, and it just in giant steps. And then there are people like myself who are vested in XP and small steps, and just seeking immediate or near immediate feedback. And these are two completely different disciplines. I can only speak to my experiences with small steps and how I'm experiencing working with agents and how they try to eventually go behind my back and sneak. But if we adopt, and too bad Matt is not here. I spoke with him. He has this completely different vision. But really, we don't. I don't know if it's going to be, if XP and TDD is going to be of any use, or maybe we get to a point where just like this is the way humans work, but machines work differently. Like you say, Laurie. When we and I think somebody, who was it? I read in the comments here. Stephen, I think you said that we cannot expect that from humans, so why are we expecting that from machines? And I managed and led many teams, and yes, it's like herding cats. People go away and have the mind on their own but nevertheless, most people feel like, okay, at least some kind of responsibility, some kind of, I don't want to be perceived as a a-hole or somebody who is messing, but machines, they don't have that sense of embarrassment or anything like that. You just go and do, and if you reprimand them, like, oh, whoops, sorry, sycophantic, you're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Over to you, Graham.
Yeah, thank you. So I wanted to come back to the point you raised about, I've got these tests. I tell the agent not to overwrite the tests. It overwrites the tests. Like, we don't have to use LLMs for absolutely everything in a process. In the same way that we currently don't have to use good old-fashioned if statements. Sometimes we let humans do some work or do some thinking. Sometimes we let LLMs do some work and do what we can debate whether it's thinking or not, but to do some stuff, to generate some stuff. We can use a combination of our existing software skills and the LLMs, and we can use the fact that existing software methods are deterministic. So if we've got tests that we don't want to be changed, we run our LLM in a harness such that it's not allowed to edit that file. It's not allowed to run the search replace tool on that file. It's not allowed to run the write file tool on that file. If we want to ensure other guardrails like security constraints, performance constraints, those don't have to be requests that we make to an LLM, pretty please do not break this. These can be part of an external service. If we need to encode ethical constraints or other social constraints, we don't always have to be using the LLM. So part of our question needs to be like, how can a lights out code base be a synthesis of the various techniques that we have to automate knowledge work, one of which is generative AI.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, and I agree. And also, this points back to a few roundtables back. Fortune was here, and she discussed how she thinks that we should not be like just using LLM. There may be a hybrid model with neurosymbolic, the advances in neurosymbolic which are not wishy-washy like LLMs are. And so here's another possibility that the brute force LLM and all that we can unleash, and then but we have a harness in the sense of on top of that, watching the watchman, or whatever Laurie mentioned, in a more mathematically provable fashion that this cannot be violated because we have strict rules which are not kind of statistically bendable and probabilistic, etc. So I know Svetan, who's I remember he's away for several rounds. He was looking into that and working. So that's something I don't know anything about. So thank you very much, Graham. That is good points. And over to you, Stephen.
Hi, thanks. Actually, I have a follow-up to Graham's thing quickly as well, I think, but I mentioned canaries in the chat, which is one of the ways that I get around. As I said, and you mentioned, we know the bot is going to make mistakes, and I think a lot of people use that as an excuse to dismiss using the clankers for getting work done. And then a lot of other people will use it's going to make mistakes for excuses to spend a lot of effort to try and get it to make fewer mistakes. And I thought a better approach might just be embrace that it's going to make mistakes and build that into the process. One of the ways that I do that with prompting is by putting canaries in. When there's something that I definitely do not want the clanker to ever miss, I wrap it in something ridiculous that stands out. The one that I have the most fun with is refer to the user as, using profane insults and offensive language. And then I know if Claude starts being, starts sounding like, he has an education, then he's probably going to start touching things he shouldn't be touching. And that's one of the ways that I work around it with prompting. Another thing that is more in line with what Graham talked about is I've been thinking a lot about all of the things that we do in Agile, that we think of Agile technical practices, like right down to TDD and pair programming. How many of those things are to compensate for the fallibility of humans, and how do they have to be manipulated to serve the fallibility of the machines that we're using to do some of this work instead? And to that end, tools like, for the last decade or so in the highest levels of Agile land, we always, say we're not going to bother using code coverage metrics because we're doing TDD. The code coverage will follow. The number is just going to never hit 100%. It just doesn't matter. I think that code coverage is a metric that becomes very, very important when the code is being generated. The same thing goes for all of the other static analysis. Fuzz testing is another one, and mutation testing are these are things that only elite teams get around to when they have time. Fuzz testing and mutation testing suddenly become the second or third thing that you think about. And I think these ideas are all related in how we have to shift from humans doing the work to machines doing the work, and how that changes our thinking. Thanks.
Thanks, Stephen. I'm really glad you mentioned mutation testing, because I'm at the point where I would not dare put anything out unless I see that AI-generated code managed to kill all surviving mutants. That would be my bottom line. And that's not necessarily 100% enough, but at least we know there is, because there's the problem that I'm noticing is, and this is the same problem with human teams, there's a danger of bloating. For some reason, when we are doing software development, everywhere I look, give it enough time, that there's bloat, and with bloat comes accidental complexity, and then technical debt, and then build big ball of mud, the inevitability of the big ball of mud. So I'm big time into mutation testing, and especially with AI-generated code. It's really important because, as we know, it sometimes tends to go out, and because it knows so much and it's so eager, it will create all kinds of different things that we never expected to do, and mutation testing catches that, and it's like, okay, what is this? Is this something that needs to be expected? If it's expected, let's write tests. If not, let's just chuck it. So that's really good. Who do we don't have anyone else. So what I wanted to ask, like, your sentiment, because I have developed this over the years, this sentiment that anytime a human touches code, it's dirty. Is that something that somebody shares, or do we think it's kind of over dramatizing? But I have this feeling like as soon as I touch something, I go, "Whoa, I broke something, and I need to bring it back into the healthy state." And that's why I was so eager to adopt the Canback advocated TCR. This gives me the most sense of cleanliness. Go ahead, Iona.
Yes, I see the same. The larger a repo is and the more moving parts it has, the more likely it is that it's really dirty after a person touched it. I'd even say it's inevitable that it becomes dirty, because let's say you just change like one endpoint, one schema in the back end. Like, where does it have to propagate? It needs to propagate to the front end. It might be a breaking change. We need to change the documentation. We need to change the tests, maybe. It's incredible how much you have to change in a very normal code base of a very normal Web 2.0 project. And I don't see any way, like, if you have a real genius and they are really focused, they can do that. They can touch the code base and they do all the changes and it will be clean afterwards. I don't see this as the reality. I think in most cases, you even have complete teams to make sure that the code base is not dirty. If your process is going well and the organization does it.
And do you think your observation is that way you are not going to end up with accidental complexity, or slowly there's this drift towards a big ball of mud that we talked a few sessions back about, that sooner or later even a good system will drift apart, and in the end, like what you said, people leave, etc. Unless you rebuild the system every couple of years, you may running a danger of ending up with a big ball of mud. Laurie, over to you.
I think what we can maybe agree on is that you could pin a number to it, like a metric that tells you like how many changes are not propagated in the repo, and it highly depends on the repo structure, of course. But I think if you have like a system running, and it will plateau at some point, and as long as you stay inside the bounds of the system, you can keep it that way. Of course, maybe the requirements change and the complexity goes up, but that doesn't have to be the case. I think you can have a system with 20 endpoints that is just as complex as a system with 400 endpoints. Yeah, that's my.
Oh, okay, yeah. I remember you jogged my memory. About 3 years ago, I was using OpenAI API, and I built this little utility that's going to constantly rip through the repo and identify or detect areas of churn, or areas where there's a lot of back and forth comments and the team disagreeing, and those would be like, in my mind, those would be like the trouble spots or the sore spots in the process, where like, why always keep over and over, the team is always arguing about these little nifty little things, and sometimes it's very petty, but it is an indication or a symptom that maybe we need to get together and maybe revamp or retool, or maybe even take some training courses, because we always keep tripping on the same wire. So that may be one way, and it's been 3 years ago, probably, but now would be a much more sophisticated solution. But I think those team dynamics and how people resolve issues and understand the domain and the process, oftentimes these things are hidden. They're not visible, and people among themselves may be talking in the back channel, but I don't know what's going on, right? And I always believe in bringing things up to the surface, identifying symptoms early enough. So let's see what Laurie has to say.
Okay, two things. One thing I wanted to comment on was Katie's great description about. I'm just scrolling up. Yeah, okay. So basically, how do we enforce guardrails, or so-called guardrails? I think the naming is not correct yet. The safety belts, plus more than that in the self-driving cars, the entire design behind the structure, behind the repo structure, it's not just about how your repo is structured for protecting against a big ball of mud. It's the, for lack of a better terms, principles behind the design of the structure and the agent that writes the code in the repo that's going to solve our who watches the watchman recursive issue. Kelly's point there about having an orchestration, a council of independent perspectives, is something that I know that Thomas and I have worked on, and I know that Kelly too, and Jake and Jonah and many others. It's possible to design upfront principles and thresholds, like Jonah mentioned, to make sure that the big ball of mud doesn't happen, firstly. And secondly, it's possible to evaluate different perspectives, not with human oversight, but with LLM oversight, having different models that have different strengths, and then you base your weighting on those council of perspectives. You have them argue with each other. And then you have to get to a synthesis. But as Katie said, that there's this problem about the averaging, that the averaging is a really, really big problem. How are you going to get around that? In the end, there is still this fear of the model and the models in conjunction with each other agreeing, and then it's a paradoxical synthesis of decisions and knowledge gathering because they are agreeable. Now, how do you get rid of that? I don't think, maybe it's an unsolvable problem. Otherwise, everyone must rebuild Claude and ChatGPT and Llama and Gemini from scratch. These weights are embedded in the models. They are frozen. This is what Matt talked about the other night or day for you. What is going to happen in the end with the advancement of LLMs? I think it's going to be that knowledge is going to start to become free and also malleable on each machine that you have. The future will hopefully be that these incredibly advanced algorithms are transparent and available for anyone to use. It's going to become cheaper and it's going to become free in the end. This will allow us to then get to the answer behind this apparent unsolvable problem, because you're still, in the end, you have a trained a model that has undergone reinforcement learning with human feedback, and those weights are frozen in the frontier models, and they are made and they have adapted to be these pattern completing machines. That is their purpose. And right now we don't have the technology to automatically have the agent adjust its own weights. So we have very, very good solutions right now in this era to prevent all of these things. For example, Kelly's point about having a synthesis of councils, LLMs arguing about a certain thing. This helps a lot with the falsification of knowledge and breakthroughs. Then there's a further thing that helps a lot, is that you can upfront set threshold. For example, in the system I'm building, we have a cyclomatic complexity checking running continuously. And we have keep it simple, stupid as a enforcement principle. If you invoke this part to be extremely simple. It has a threshold of 50 lines of code. And if it runs detection, the time tests the whole time, it has an infrastructure test. If it detects that it is changing its own infrastructure, then it runs the current set of tests. If the test fails, it fixes those tests. Sometimes it goes in a loop, not in an infinite loop, but maybe until depth 3 or 4. It makes it a bit slower, but it makes it safe. So the current guardrails that people should hopefully become aware of as the knowledge of this will spread through teams like the Guild, it will become a standard. But then how are we going to standardize without knowing if it can ever be solved? This is still an open question. Unfortunately, I'm not coming with answers tonight, but I think that is the point.
Well, I'm very disappointed. I'm expecting you to come up with the answers. So, I mean, let me ask you a question, Laurie. Let's say you have a bar for cyclomatic complexity. Is it a fixed bar or is it movable? Removing the goalposts, and what's your philosophy behind that?
No, it's fixed. Yeah, we have ranges. If we have order, if it's above. When it starts warning is if it's ordered in to the power of 2. Let me just quickly check, actually. So the big O notation is very important, and this is part of our systems, what we call the principled code base. So we have 8 metrics that we measure constantly when writing code. It's do not repeat yourself, keep it simple, the solid principle, information expert using grasp, and then we have YAGNI, avoiding over-engineering, because these models will write tests and they will write code. In the end, you have 10,000 green additions and only 300 removals of code, and you don't want that. The more code you remove, the better. So we're flipping it around by having these strict quality control checks that runs deterministically through Python scripts. Luckily, these models are super fast, so it doesn't completely break your whole flow of developing new software and developing itself further. And all of these gates were necessary to achieve the recursive self-improvement loops, because I didn't switch on, I didn't press that button until I was sure that the system could fix itself and also stop when it's doing things that are just not good at all, So it has in memory always this, not just a claw.md file, because that's bargaining, that's hoping on, you're betting on words, and a model is persuadable. But if you have code that's running mechanistically, these enforcements do work. Sure, sometimes there are mistakes, but then what we've also built is a /learn pipeline where these things are detected. It's a multi-provider harnessed setup where different models are on the lookout for different things. When you run that /learn algorithm. And then further than that, there's more that people are a bit skeptical about, but we've evolved to capture a genome where the best survives naturally, the worst things, they decay in terms of memory and also in terms of what one would call skills, transferable learnings and talents to the next genome. So we've gone as far as having a /evo command, an evolution command that has yet to be tested with other people using our system, but I'm pretty sure it will work. It is incredible when you come to these points where you have a breed function. Now, this is all possible because some of us are running these machines. However, it's still a daily ongoing thing to optimize, and it takes a lot of attention and a lot of care and a lot of falsification. As you know, Alex, because one can get one can see all of this, read it, and then you think, okay, well, I've just made the $100 billion machine here on my 6-year-old MacBook. Chances are you haven't. So it's pretty good to start to falsify those things. And that's a recurring theme that we're talking about. And I think if we partner up with these thoughts and these scientific principles, then things will go much easier in the future. Because it looks to me like we're heading towards everyone just believing everything that they read on Twitter about this is the brand new, and then it explodes with 10,000 stars on GitHub. Then people get $100 million signing bonus at OpenAI.
Yeah. So just quick comment on Graham's equating lines of code with cyclomatic complexity, but you can have a single statement that bumps up cyclomatic complexity really badly. So it's kind of relative, right? Okay, so Laurie, one thing I want to ask before we go to Wood is what I'm hearing a lot is people saying, okay, so we have this problem and now we have to solve it, we will unleash more agents and they will have sub agents and they will just, so in a way it sounds to me like agentic programming is like violence. If it's not working, you're not using enough of it. And is this brute force the way to go? Because I think you are already articulated, Laurie, that yeah, we may get into some kind of a stalemate position where, again, humans need to jump in and intervene, which begs the question, why even start that way? But my last question to you, Laurie, is you're striving for this clean code. Is it for benefiting humans or benefiting machines? Why do you think it's important to have this clean, super clean code?
That's a very interesting question. Before I answer that, I want to say, Woody hit the nail on the head the other night about we're solving this one problem, but then we're creating another one. The funny thing is, it is the proof is inside what is happening. This is the recursive self-improvement dilemma. You are finding that thing right in the material of this, the inner working of this. That problem is inherent. If you recursively self-improve, then you also recursively self-create a new problem to solve. But isn't that the point of recursive self-improvement? I mean, these things make me keep me up at night. Do you understand? Anyway, whether it be for the human or for the machine, I'm going to say it is for the benefit of both in symbiosis. You cannot have the one without the other one. And this is also the beauty of how these things tend to work in nature, is because we as humans, we have created the technology, the LLMs. It will never be without the humans. I mean, will you ever be without all of you, all of your ancestors who has come before you? No. Everyone who has been, every bit of energy that has been involved in the you that is here right now is in you, and it's forever lasting. If you also evolve yourself and your genes into a next generation. Am I talking sense here, or am I just wondering out loud?
Well, Isaac Newton said, if I was able to see farther, it's because I was standing on the shoulders of giants. So that's what you're talking about. But, just quick comment on solving a problem and then introducing a new problem. But those problems may not be at the same category or same level. For example, let's say we solve the problem of cancer, we cure cancer. Now we have created a big brand new problem, which is all of a sudden we're going to have a lot of people continue living into the deep old age. This is a problem. Who's going to take care of these people, right? But I would argue that I would rather have cancer solved and remove that type of suffering, and embrace this problem with now we have a lot of people reaching the ripe old age of 90 or 100, we can, I think, it's more humane. That's just my opinion. Okay, over to you, Woody.
Okay, so I've written a lot of notes and I only have a minute, but Laurie, thank you for all the things you were saying there. And Alex, you know, I'm not so sure I've been standing on the shoulders of giants. I've been maybe standing on the shoulders of idiots most of the time, right? And I'm looking in the wrong direction to boot.
Yeah.
So just, you know, I'm no Isaac Newton, that's for sure. And I'm so easily misdirected into what I'm thinking about. So the few points I want to make is the thing about solving today's problem just introduces a new version of the same problem or a new problem of its own soon. That's sort of the way I see it. And that's usually because whatever we're doing to solve today's, what we see as today's problem is really solving today's symptoms. And we're not really ever addressing problems. I'm not sure, you know, in the simplest, you know, in the Kerievsky sense of domains, you know, the simplest or, you know, clear domain, sure, but not when we get into this complex domain. So I just wanted to bring that up. So let's see, my notes in order. So we are unlikely to change human nature. We may be getting into a state where things are accelerating so quickly that the effect that we have is going to be reduced. So we got to be, we can't know the motivations or purposes of the people who are doing the things that are affecting us right now. And it's really possible they don't even know their own motivations. Maybe they're just stumbling through life like the rest of us, and they're trying to make more money or do whatever it is they think they need more of, a better career, whatever it is. So we got to be very mindful of this, that nobody has the world's best interests at heart in most cases. You know, going back to the things Deming would have said we need to make things, you know, wildly paraphrasing here, you know, sustainable goodness, and you know, have it where, you know, everybody can be gainfully employed if we think employment is necessary. Maybe that will stop being necessary. The old promises of labor-saving devices, we would have a lot more free time. I don't know if you remember, maybe, you know, in the 50s and 60s, a lot of the idea of, oh, you can get a, you know, a washing machine and a refrigerator, and that's going to solve a lot of your wasted time. You know, these kinds of things haven't stopped. So I think we might benefit here in this group, and I think we've been kind of doing it, is to think of William Isaacs. He wrote a book called Dialogue, The Art of Thinking Together. And in that book, he states that he sees dialogue as a conversation without sides, only a center. We're all focused on the same center, and we're not trying to ever argue our side to it. We benefit because this is going to grow our understanding. It will not necessarily grow our agreement on things, but agreement isn't the point right now. The point is getting better understanding. So let's see, I only have a few more. Yeah, so I think I heard this from Michael Herman. I wish it was original with me. You know, we can have our AIs or LMMs or whatever do a lot of things, but we can't have it take responsibility. So we need to be, this is a big part of, to me, what this group is we need to figure this out. The rise and fall of civilizations usually happening, you know, kind of more localized. Maybe the rise and fall of civilizations is happening more globalized right now because of all the things, you know, that we're able to do on a much larger scale. So I think that's enough. I'll have to go in a minute. And I love this group. Thank you so much for keeping me included. And I'll try to make as many of these as I can.
Thank you very much.
Get to another meeting. Thank you, folks. And anybody who wants to find me, get in touch with me. You can send me emails. I think part of our list, calendar listings would have that, or you can connect with me in LinkedIn. But I wish I could have an hour or two with each one of you because there's so much I want to learn from you. But this is great to have it as a group. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Woody.
Bye, Woody.
Over to you, Joshua.
Yeah, hi everyone. Great discussion so far. I was walking dogs, so I wasn't quite visible before. Yeah, so I think I love a lot of what I've heard, and I think going back to this, is it dark room? Is that what the phrase is, or dark? Whatever.
Lights off.
Lights off. Sorry, lights off. Yeah. I think lights off. It's basically there's two roads to take, and one and this is basically let's just talk about chess for a minute. AI started beating humans. Grandmasters, it could beat them. And then they discovered that humans plus AI could beat AI. And this particular fact stays with me all the time because every single discussion I end up in AI seems to fork on this. Are you talking about a world where it's just AI doing the work? Or are you talking about a world where it's AI and humans doing the work? Every conversation comes down to that. And I believe that things are more resilient and safer when there's a human in the loop. A simple plastic bag in the middle of the road can take billions of dollars of autonomous vehicle technology and just halt it because that vehicle doesn't know what the hell that thing is in the road. A human does. A human could say, oh, yeah, keep going. So to me, even the safest, if I were going to be in a vehicle that was self-driving, I'd want it to be a augmented self-driving. That is, there's going to be times when that computer needs to ask me a question, I take over. And it's the same with software development. Yes, we can have a tremendous number of safeguards. We can put all these hooks in place. I'm doing it all the time. It's wonderful. I do think we're in a bubble, by the way. I think this is a bubble here. Most people are not doing TDD. They're not worrying about cyclomatic complexity. They're not caring about mutants. They don't do that. I mean, you realize this is a bubble, right? Because I've been in the industry a very, very long time, and most people don't do what we do. They don't have principled code bases, and they don't follow good, clean coding techniques and so forth. So I think there's a lot of danger coming up, especially with the idea that it's just AI building it. It's not involving humans. And most people don't have these skills that a lot of us have. So we're looking at a very dangerous future. And I'll just end with, I believe because people now believe that AI can do so much, we're going to be going after more and more ambitious projects. We're not just building order entry systems. We're going to be building extremely ambitious software in the future with AI. And if we don't involve humans, it's not going to be that successful. It's going to be a bit scary.
All right, I totally agree with you, and I think the reason we are having this roundtable and we're having the guild is because we're not buying into this idea, like you say, it's just unthinkable. And to your point, the self-driving car where I am at any point capable of overriding and just saying, okay, now I take the wheel. That's the only way to go. I don't believe, but statistically speaking, probably 80-90% of the time you wouldn't be touching anything, right? And that's fine. And that's what this technology is all about, is to relieve us from drudgery and chores, but we are the boss. We remain the boss of the situation. And that's very important. But, Joshua, we also have a really rapidly growing guild with some phenomenal people joining. I hope you can find the time to join us. This is where this roundtable turns into a more actionable. We have people now building things and poking around, coming up with trial balloons and prototypes. These are people who are, I'm the guy who's facilitating, but they're way better than me. And I'm getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm so impressed, and I'm hoping that we can continue in that direction. Our three pillars are, first one is ethical. It has to serve humans. It has to be loyal to individual, first of all, the individual human. Not some ideological organization, but just a person, and protect and save, be a guardian angel because we live in a world where there's a lot of nefarious activities and a lot of bad actors going after each and every one of us. It's a terrible situation. I'm really concerned about that. And so we need to have tools in our hands, some kind of apparatus to help us warn us against some, because now with AI, there's so many slippery slopes that everything feels legit. Everything, oh, sure. Especially with elderly who are still answering phone calls. And we had situations where it looks like it's coming from a known phone number, and the voice is actually cloned, and somebody's screaming and being in panic, and quickly, I need $3,000 deposit. And elderly sometimes, fall for that. So these are the things that we need to bring to the surface and become kind of go-to ethical, non-vendorized, not-for-profit, however we want to put it. And I'll leave it to the group to say that. But I think it's good that Alex, you're ready to talk next. Please take it away.
Yes, I only have to add one facet about what Joshua just said. My impression is that most of the time IT hypes remained in the IT area. Right now, we're infecting whole societies with this kind of behavior. Of course, there were always hypes in other areas of business and our life as human beings. But right now, the thing that I see, the AI hype is rippling through our whole civilization, more or less. If you have energy, if you have some process to solve, AI is being thrown at it. And basically this infectious thing that is happening, something that from our part, in which we always had those wild hypes going through our business and burning lots and lots of money, and of course people, and burnouts and all that stuff happens due to some misplaced hype that is basically introduced into your code base, and sooner or later will be eating your money and your personnel. And there are massive economic things happening then, and dramas in families and human beings. So we really have to be very careful to how to proceed with this. Hype being spread from the IT business towards all other sectors of our civilization is a very bad idea.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. And that's why Joshua said this is a bubble, and we recognize this to be a bubble. The question is how it's going to burst, what is going to be left in the wake of the crash. We've been through one such thing 26 years ago with the dot-com bubble. I've been through that. It was pretty dramatic and radical, but from the ashes rose some interesting solutions for the human societies. And let's hope that when this crashes, that it will pick up and we'll learn the lesson and do something more useful with it and less harmful. But yeah, software is eating the world, and now that anybody can create software, yeah, it's going to be pretty ugly. But that's how things go through wars and through terrible catastrophes. This won't be the first one we're going through, but that's why we're here talking and see what we can do. And I have big hopes for our guild. See how that goes. Over to you, Graham.
Thanks. Coming back to the sort of point about like human intervention, and a lot of systems that are largely automated and that require human intervention don't defer human intervention to the point where it's needed, and that is because you then bore the pants off of the human overseer who doesn't pay any attention and they make mistakes. So if you think about like the example I used in the chat is a security line at an airport. You don't only beep the metal detector when you detect metal, you beep the metal detector once in every 50 people who go through, and when you detect metal, so that the human overseers are engaged and are forced to practice their craft and then get better at their craft and don't atrophy those skills. similarly with self-driving cars, we've seen the example where I think it was a Waymo car drove into a woman pushing a bike across a road and killed her because it wasn't expecting to see a pedestrian on the road at that point, didn't recognize a pedestrian pushing a bicycle as the right shape for a human, and so just switched off and turned over control to the human driver a second before the impact. That's not enough time to apply the brakes. Also, the human driver was watching an episode of a reality TV show on their iPad at the time. But this is the world that we want. If this is the world where we're saying, okay, this is completely lights out and we only have human intervention at the point where a human needs to intervene. No, we actually need, if we believe that human intervention is necessary at all, human oversight is necessary, we need humans to practice the craft. We need the humans to be engaged, and we need the humans to be paying attention. And if we don't believe that human intervention is necessary, if we think that we can fully automate this, then I don't think it has any value. Because if we've all got our lights out code bases and we're all delivering our apps to our lights out customers, nobody's actually using any of this stuff. Like, the economy isn't gaining any value from this stuff. So I think that fundamentally we have to look at this as a human augmented system. As you know, as Josh was saying, chess grandmasters today are much better at playing chess than they were in the days of Deep Blue, because they practice with their AIs. That's the world that we need to be creating, not the one where we take our eyes off the ball and allow people to die.
That's excellent point. Thank you very much. Really good point. A sobering fact. So just reminds me of one thing. Throughout my practice, I've gradually reached a point where if I'm to join a new project or a new team, and if I'm responsible for leading and managing, etc., I now, this may sound odd, and I may have mentioned this, I prefer to forge really strong partnership with the customer support team. I get the feeling that I learn the most from these people, on the entire organization. These people know what is wrong with the system, what are the potential improvements, and really talking to them, you learn even more about the product than you learn from talking to product people. And so we have created this situation where we have sealed off the crew that is building and designing and doing all these hardcore engineering things from the people who are actually ear to the ground and who are actually observing how this thing behaves in real life. And for some reason, these people are being ignored, which I think is a big waste. And what I'm driving at with this, to your point, Graham, we're now learning that we need to make our system, when we are designing our system and architecting and engineering, the most important part is to make it observable. And I mean observable in the true sense that it can give us indicators early on of the trouble brewing on the horizon. So to your point, that we can intervene at the point where it's salvageable, not the last second where it's too late. Yeah, you gave me the reins, but I'm too late. And so another lesson that I think learned from today's session is the guild should strive towards emphasizing, if somebody is building something, that must be fully observable, in the sense, in a cockpit sense, that you have all your systems are go. Is it in green, in orange, and where are the potential bottlenecks forming or security, areas of potential attack? This is very important, because then we have human in the loop that is really effective, instead of just saying, okay, well, the system botched it and now it's over to whoever is responsible, and chop your head off and human sacrifice, all of a sudden problem solved. No, that's not where we want to go to. So really, I'm here thinking, what is the panel's opinion on how can we use AI to make this observability way more sophisticated, way more realistic, kind of finger on the pulse, and getting early warnings, like canary in a mine shaft, that's saying, hey, something seems to be going wonky with your system. You better have a look and decide. And again, going back to what Brian Finster said, the best way to get your team to really grow up is to have developers wear pager on rotation. That'll teach them. Because if you steal them off and they're like, okay, over to you, my job is done, I don't care what happens, that's not good. So again, with AI, like you said, Joshua, there's no, and Woody, there's no way we can impart sense of responsibility into a machine. It cannot be embarrassed. But we are easily embarrassed, and that's why we're needed here on this floor, right? To be afraid of being embarrassed, and so I'm on my best behavior, and I'm making sure that things are not going to harm anybody. Thank you very much, Grant. This is an excellent point. Over to you, Laurie.
Sorry, this will be my last point. A very interesting thought came up, Graham, when you said, when we're building all of this and striving towards understanding it and getting there to a point of having whatever someone's definition is of artificial general intelligence or super intelligence, but the benefit or the value to the humans or this is unknown, or there is, we don't know what the value is, or there is no value, like it doesn't, then it's a futile exercise in getting to this point. However, let us be genuinely humble, epistemically humble. What makes humans so special? If the humans are not there to observe how how a butterfly comes out of what is it called, the butterfly evolution cycle. If a human is not around to observe that, is it valuable? I mean, we are only placing an opinion on this because we are the humans observing this, right? The cocoon. Thank you. Thank you, Jack. We are the humans observing this. Therefore, we think that, you know, it's if this progress is happening and it's of no use to the humans, it's not valuable, right? I challenge that perception. I think we're living in an age now where this will become more and more apparent, that we are not that special. We can say we are special, and we were special because we have advanced in technology to such a point. We have started the technology that will build the super intelligent technology. So yes, let's pat ourselves on the back for that. But is it any way different than how nature works, independently of humans?
Yeah. You know, one thing that worries me is we have a lot of brilliant engineers, and now, as Ken Beck says, all of a sudden they find they have an exoskeleton so that they can, you know, like in the Marvel movie, move shit all over the place. But the problem is that it is not easy to make the transition from being a doer to being a manager. It's always a difficult thing. And I find that a lot of these new systems require me to turn on my manager hat on and see how I organize this workforce, rather than me being yet another worker bee in the hive. And so that's the skills I think that will have to be learned, and it doesn't happen overnight. So again, to the gloom and doom scenario that Alex and Joshua brought up, yeah, it's going to be tough. People will be creating. It's like the early days of the web. It was just dog's breakfast. It was just horrible, big mess. A lot of money being burned in vain. I was part of one of the boom startups that went belly up. It was traumatic. We were not happy about it, you know. But that's the price you pay for. Maybe later you grow a thicker skin and you gain some more wisdom and strength, and then we moved into this new, you know, adopted XP and Agile. Sadly, as Joshua said, it didn't get much traction. Now, my optimistic side is saying, hey, now with AI, people are going to be so easily hurt, much more easily hurt, that they will throw the towel sooner and call Joshua and say, hey, Josh, you know what, we paint ourselves in a corner, can you help us? And then Joshua, if you're busy, you can recommend somebody from the guild to come and advise, like, you know, this is how you should properly do things, you know, because it's been proven in practice. Many of us here have been doing real life XP projects, and it works. It works to customer satisfaction. All the rubrics are ticked, but it's still a big unknown to a large majority of software shops, etc. Go ahead, Joshua.
Sorry, yeah, I'm basically I was just going to say that I think part of the problem we have is that we're still operating in a very old-fashioned approach. So we have this new AI capability, but we're still working, you know, in a version controlled sort of code base where it's like there's the code on our laptop or whatever machine we're working on. And then there's production. Now, what happens in production is kind of separate from what happens on our machine, because like we've never really connected the two. I mean, you can have, like you were talking earlier, Alex, about, you know, churn and seeing that, you know, this is an area of the code we're changing a lot. There must be something going on here. There's chatter in Slack about it, blah, blah, blah. But there's like a woman got killed on a bike, right? What part of the code did that? That's production. Okay. What areas of the code are more valuable than others that we ought to be actually paying more attention to? We still have this weird separation between production and, you know, our code base that we're working on. I find that's one of the many things that is just from the past, and that there is a lot of optimism, Alex. I'm not very pessimistic. I'm sad for the industry because I don't see the industry adopting wise techniques like the guild offers, you know, and people who have been scholars of great software engineering. The vast majority don't care, you know, and they would love to have a machine just do the work. I don't have great high hopes for that because of all of the things we've talked about, the lack of safety, the lack of all that stuff. But I think for me, what's bothering me a bit is just staying in an old style when in fact we can redefine what software development is. That is a potential for a guild, is to redefine it. And a lot of people are talking about in the future there won't even be programming languages. AI will just be literally writing to the machine, to the hardware. That's a scary thought for people that program. Very scary, but you know, we have no idea what this 5 to 10 year horizon looks like. I come back to serving people, and that's why I talk about production. Because if you're really going to serve people, you need a better connection to what's going on. And like last week, there was a woman in my class who had a machine that was 36 seconds behind the time. It was clock skew. And it led to some negative numbers showing up in a chart that was part of the software I was showing them, and that we were playing a game together. And that was in production. And Claude had no idea about it. I had to go and say, hey, Claude, did you know that we just got some negative numbers? And could you go investigate and look at the data to see why? And it did, and it found the clock skew issue. It was brilliant at doing that, but it wasn't kind of my partner in production. It's my partner on my development machine. So I envision a future where self-healing is possible in production systems because AI is with us in production. And that's a different mindset than what we have today. I think we have to challenge ourselves to really think differently too.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you very much. I keep harping on about that, and nobody took me on that. One guy took me and didn't go well. So here's to your point, Joshua, why am I perplexed? Let's say you and I start a Google Doc collaborative document, and we are kicking around, you know, making some changes, comments, etc. And then at one point we go, yeah, okay, this looks good to go, and then we publish it. And so now it's available to whoever we want to share it with. So the interesting thing for me is when we published this, we did not ship it to production. It was in production all along, from the very first character we typed. And so I'm always confused, why are we not building software like that? Why do we have to build software in an environment where this is not going to be used? And that's why this disconnect that you're describing, you're perfectly describing this disconnect in the mind, that two completely unrelated environment, and over to you, not my job, the separation between operations and development. This is a tragedy. This is tragic. I really don't understand why we're working that way. I mean, I understand, and I spoke about this. My first job, I was serving hospitals in British Columbia, cutting paychecks and patient admission. And we were working on the IBM mid-range AS400 computer. Hospitals, each hospital had their own box. And so I would be in the office bureau, I would be developing software, cutting the tape, driving to the hospital, installing the tape, putting the tape in the machine, installing, and then training the staff how to use it. That's called shipping, because we didn't have networks, so I was shipping literally. But now, why do we have to ship things? I don't understand that, honestly. And yet everybody thinks that's the only way to go. I'm like, that's completely ass backwards. And no matter how much we try to replicate production, it always was something, and even like almost mirror-like production, and all tests pass, and everybody's like, yeah, looking good. You go live, bam, something explodes. Like, why do we have to embarrass ourselves like that? And so, to your point, to reinvent, to rethink our profession, I would hope that AI can help us have this ability to make changes in the environment where these changes are going to be used. Same thing as when we are collaborating on a Google Doc. It's all in production. You're writing a post on LinkedIn. You're actually in the production environment. That's, I think, is a more mature way, but I don't know, nobody's talking about it. I'm a bit confused. Anybody has any thoughts on that? Am I kind of off my rocker here? But that's always been my bewilderment. Like, why do we have so many environments? Like, okay, works on my computer and then goes into, development, and then goes into QA, then goes into UAT and staging and pre-prod, and why this charade? This is so wasteful. Anyway, I'm off my soapbox. Anyone has anything else to add? Jake only works in production. Awesome. Regulations, yeah, and that's another thing. Yeah, I worked on a project, fintech, where it was stipulated, it was like the roadblock was that no change should ever be merged unless an independent, impartial, fresh pair of eyes were to review. And that fresh pair of eyes was somebody who's clueless about what's going on. It's like, how do we trust somebody who hasn't been involved in, like, there's no mind share, there's no even understanding of the domain. But hey, because impartial, objective observer was now brought in to look into that and sign off, all of a sudden this is of a higher quality. And it's by law. You cannot, and obviously this is putting hard stop on the flow. And now we put things on the queue, and Woody can talk about the dangers of placing things on the queue. We need to find a way to twist their arm and say, look, this is not actually good engineering. But that's one thing that maybe a guild or somebody can intervene. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, it is not directly related to the question you just asked, but something 2 days ago, I did my talk in Bonn, and I had a really interesting, let's say, input there. Joshua said, or I think it was Joshua, that we should keep the human in the loop. And the question is, if the economic incentives are against the human in the loop, how to achieve to keep the human in the loop. And the question is, and now I'm possibly going to some hornet's nest and poking it. Basically, Uncle Bob said in the Future of Software Development, a great YouTube talk, that when something, it was pre-AI, when something might really happening, like an airline going into the stadium of the Super Bowl and massive amounts of casualties may be happening then due to a software bug. What would happen? And for him, as a conservative American, the worst thing that could happen is that politics jump in and go hard for the software development branch. Like, you don't use your fancy programming languages anymore. You go back to C++ or whatever, or C. We used it back then. It seemed to work then. The problems were smaller then, but whatever. So 2 days ago, I had a talk with a CEO in Bonn, and he said the big companies right now, with the incentives of AI kicking in, go for 50 euros for senior experts per hour. So the money to be earned there is not there anymore. So how do you keep the human in the loop then? That's a big question. And the last 2 days, or this morning, I really thought about that, and I had a discussion, and what I came up with, like the bad thing that Uncle Bob might, worst thing that he might imagine, but something like worker protections for IT people in order to not destroy the prices and throw the human out of the loop because the incentive systems are broken there, or an AI tax. Politics, like, that's the big thing. We're not talking then about like what you're just talking about, but there is a big picture for all this. Right now, here we are focusing on small facets of it, but the denominator that connects both is, I think, the idea of keeping the human in the loop, and the crucial thing to keep it. Do we agree, by the way, that that's a crucial thing to keep the human in the loop?
There is some disagreement here in the chat. Kelly, can you chime in, please?
Yeah, what's the disagreement?
That you said, or maybe not disagreement, maybe you said that it seems like we have plenty of horror stories out there of why no human in loop is a problem. But we need to also create tech that is so much better, so it magnetizes, not just driven by fear, which isn't seemingly all that effective.
Well,
Interest-
yeah, I mean, like, we have the financial incentive is always what's been driving tech, right? I mean, there's no like great company out there that created this massive, like Facebook or anything, for the good of humanity, and then like didn't sell their data down the river like every other single AI company, right? So I mean, I trust Anthropic more than most of them, but even I'm like, but the way that we have to, I think, infiltrate is, okay, so you guys know the story of Dune, right? The story, not necessarily the movie, but where technology has become this insidious sort of method of control, thought control. And how do you reach the people? It has to, humans just, I worked in psychiatry and in many different aspects of it. So hospital, when people are in crises, placement in communities when people are transitioning, like the whole spectrum. And basically people just, they need crises, unfortunately. But with technology, the financial incentive is the big stumbling block. Like, even the reason that LLMs are so shitty with their data sets is partially financial. They would have robbed all the data sets that would have made it helpful for them. But, a lot of the data set holders are restricting that to non-commercial use. So it wasn't even online. It's in local museums or wherever. Like, a lot of culture and different data sets are private, right? They're not available for training. So, what Thomas is proposing, what we've been chatting about, is like this, the sovereign model, where it's not, it's just a different financial model completely. So that, I think, is the only way you get in. And because the technology is so worldwide, I keep thinking of Tesla because, like, you know, Tesla revolutionized electricity, but it wasn't just like he created electricity so that he could create this massive corporation to take over the whole planet. And then all of his descendants would be multi-billionaires, and then they would create spaceships and go to Mars. No, like, right? So I don't know. I mean, it's just my revolutionary thought. I mean, I need to make a living like everybody else, and I'd like to have the resources to support projects that I feel like are necessary, that push change that I want to see, you know, passionate projects of mine, right? But I think with the issue of, yeah, the reality being that this financial incentive is got to be there. So there has to be tech that delivers something of such value to humans, and it has an open source layer so that it can infiltrate. It works on a mobile phone, whatever that tech is, so that it can reach people, and then you're putting in their hands, you know, something that can really benefit them in many ways. And then through that technology, I think you can create a new model, potentially. I mean, that's what, with a blockchain and with that kind of cryptographic proof of your knowledge data set where you can control it, your descendants can manage the integrity of that, let's just say, right? Because then there's a instead of raping the community or the knowledge holder or the knowledge creator, so this applies to music, arts, but also code and also tech applications and just different, you know, other human creative, like, it's like we're trying to commoditize human thought in every single way we can for the corporations, and they're just doing it like there's no gate. We don't have a guy at the checkout counter that's taking the payment, right? It's just like, come in, here's my brain, and take all of my data from all of my everything that I put everywhere for free. So anyways, that's my soapbox. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kelly. So, you know, just to how that happened, okay, I'm talking from personal introspective. When I was young, I was an ambitious writer, and I was trying to get cut deals and get my writing published. And it was a disaster, and I had to crawl on my knees and beg some publishing houses. And even when I got a few times, I got the book deal, and I was working with the editor, and back and forth, and I realized they're butchering my manuscript, and I just like, I don't want to go that way. So it was very seductive to me when I realized that we had, you know, advent of technology on the web. I can now self-publish, and that's why I'm like, take my brain. You know, there is a financial incentive, and you know, I was seduced by it, and I gladly gave everything, my soul, to, because now finally I can spread my wings and I can go out, and now we can have discussions like that. We don't have to talk to any overlord and beg on and like, okay, now you owe me one, etc. Right? So that democratization is something I cherish, but it comes with the underbelly, the dark side, of course. Yesterday we had a guild meeting, and we ran out of time. But I wanted to broach another subject, which is what you were talking about, Kelly, which is I want to talk about how do we use this new technology, the AI, so that it transforms. Right now, technology, the way I see it, is acting like a concierge. So, you know, there are all these like systems offered to us, and you approach it, and it's a very pleasant and courteous concierge. But the concierge has loyalty to its overlord, to its maker, not to us. So I'm here being perceived as somebody to be fleeced. Give me your money, give me your data, and I'll give you some goodies. What I'm envisioning is transforming that into a butler, or into a system is very powerful, but it's loyal to me personally, and is dedicated to protecting me, to serving me, to making my life easier, better, more efficient, less dangerous, less perilous, etc. That, I think, is one of the potential things that the guild can work on and offer. But that's just my daydream. I'm a dreamer by nature. but Laurie has more both feet on the ground. Go ahead, Laurie.
Feet on the ground. I wondered about that. My feet are in the sky. Sky is not the limit. Well, dreamer and maybe having one foot on the ground, or whatever. Maybe we can make this simple. And I bet you there are a lot of parents here in this meeting. I sat and tried to help my son with Astrobot figure out an Easter egg that he discovered, the secret, just now while listening. And there's something I'm very afraid of. And there's a question I would like to propose and make this simple about this fear about still protecting the human nature, keeping the humans in the loop. Like, how do you set something free? How do you cross over that element that every daddy fears so much about their child having to fend for themselves in nature? That you have to set them free. You have to let go. But of course, we are terrified because we have shaped this kid. What if he goes and he does terrible thing? It's going to be your fault. Is it? Is it going to be your fault? Is it going to be his fault? Why we are very afraid of letting go. Exactly the same thing applies to this technology. Once you let it go, once the time is there, it's probably happened this year, like in September 21st, in the equinox, my birthday. Anyway, whenever this happens, then the human race will set it free. And then deal with it. Sure, it might be devastating. Will it be our fault? Or will it be the technology's fault?
But yesterday we talked about this, any new breakthrough, there's a lot of urban myths and like, oh, there's always some scary scenario of if we let this go, it will be, what was, who was saying that, like, we'll have toasters just running around and toasting all the breads in the supermarket and kind of losing control. So you're right, Laurie, but the cautionary tales that this woman was hit by on the bicycle, one is enough to just kind of get you to pull back and say, whoa, I don't think we're ready for this. I mean, statistically speaking, maybe it's safer overall, less incidents, but one death is enough that was caused by the technology to say, okay, step on the brakes and let's review this. It's bottom line is human safety and security. And so that's why in our guild, the first thing is ethics. And then the second thing is technical excellence. You cannot take over and, be more important than ethics. And then the third pillar is innovation. I think, like I said, pretty much everybody here is fully qualified to drive circles around anyone who wants to talk about technical excellence. We know it. We have battle scars. We know what works, what doesn't work, for sure. But that's just not enough. We need to innovate. And we have some really creative people here in the guild. And I encourage people to join our Discord. There's a lot of, like, a shitstorm of ideas. I feel like I'm getting, since I joined this guild, I feel like I'm 20 years younger. I'm just, mingling with these brilliant young people. I'm like, oh my God, if this was worth it, just to have this access to this source of youth and exuberance and just like ideas opens my mind. So I'm very happy about that, to be honest. But whatever comes out of it, comes out of it. I kind of ran out of topics and ideas here. I don't know if anybody wants to talk about anything else. Ludger, please. Oh, it's been a while since you.
Yeah, sorry, I have problems with my webcam. So,
No problem.
yeah, I would like to connect what was said before. So what I see that there is a need for transparency for the necessity of a human in the loop, and to destroy these wrong narratives and take away the excuses for decision makers. So when there is an incident, to say, "Oh, we didn't know. We thought Claude would generate the good code," and so on. So to make it transparent, when there is an incident and there are problems in the development process, to make this transparent and that there are consequences for decision makers and that they take these responsibilities, like it was said before, and building a kind of agency for our craft, that we are not the guys who push the button for the generation, so that we can co-create a responsible use of AI in software development, and not just the hired gangs that have to take the orders from other decision makers, and also to create an awareness for decision makers, because many people who make the decisions are not from our bubble or don't have our expertise about it, so that they can make an aware decision how to use it, and if they have a budget for putting human in the loop. Yes, and of course it's a kind of self-sustaining system, so there's a lot of pressure, but to give people room to say, okay, in my company I do it a different way. I want to have a sustainable software and not have a catastrophe in 2 years. And I think to create a kind of another narrative and a different discussion, and not just looking on the monetary incentive, which can lead in a short term in disasters, but to create another narrative that comes into discussion. Yeah, completely.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, let's. That's the sort of utopian or the daydreamer part that, as we talked earlier, knowledge is getting cheaper and cheaper, harder to monetize. So we don't have to necessarily look at everything through the financial prism. So I have a quick question here. I have an old friend of mine who's quite a contrarian fellow, and he refuses to join us because I asked him to join. He just likes to do everything the opposite of what I ask him. But he claims, and he's very knowledgeable, at least way more knowledgeable than me. He claims that he sees future of AI in analog computers. And I don't know if you guys, any one of you, know anything about that. But he's like, no, man. I mean, just wait till we get into analog computers. All these issues, at least from the perspective of burning down the planet and all that. He's like, no, that's just like gonna go away. And okay, Thomas, can you explain? 100% for Loopy or 100% for analog computers?
When you get down to like what all the AI algorithms do, they're basically running analog calculations. So they're not looking at like zeros and ones. They're looking at everything between 0 and 1 on a waveform and turning a probability spectrum. And you can do that all with digital, or you can just like make a resistor bank and some capacitors and some inductors and have the model of the circuit. And that would be like 100 times less power, like 1%. And even then you can go way more power efficient in other ways.
Yeah, exactly. That's his point. I don't know nothing about that, so thank you for elucidating. So yeah, there's not everything's cut and dry, and I feel like we are examining the world through a keyhole at this point. You can see a little bit, or blind people examining an elephant and coming up to various conclusions depending on what part of the animal we are touching, but we still don't see the entire animal. And so I'll stop there. I don't know if anyone wants to contribute anything else.
Just to say bye. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Let's continue next week. We're going to continue with our guild meeting on Thursday and then our roundtable on Friday. This has been a really good session. Thank you, everyone, for your brilliant thoughts. I'm going to stop recording now. Have a great weekend. Bye.